Hello and welcome to Healing Tips from the Heart, Intuition with Helpers, Healers, and Guides. I am your host, Dr. Lori Hops, licensed psychologist, writer, and artist. I've explored mind, body, and spirit related to intuition, or your personal guidance system, since early childhood. Meet my guests who have learned from their personal and professional lives to explore vast realms of knowing, synchronicities, and overcoming challenges. Their stories may inspire you with tools to enhance your daily living and relationships. Hello, everyone, and welcome my special guest, Dr. Chris Farrelly, naturopathic medicine doctor from Bastyr University California, and Doctor of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine from Pacific College of Oriental Medicine in San Diego, California. Chris emphasizes work with digestive health. He focuses on conditions like IBS, IBD, SIBO, leaky gut, and the intestinal microbiome, and their influence on other body systems like the brain, the liver, and the skin. He uses many modalities, including acupuncture and homeopathy, IV injection therapy, and focuses on lifestyle factors like diet, exercise, and sleep. He also is trained in many modalities with energy medicine, which we'll be hearing about in a few minutes. Dr. Farrelly is here to make healthcare kind, down to earth, and accessible to everyone. So welcome, Dr. Farrelly. It's so good to see you.
So good to see you, Lori. Thank you for having me as a guest.
My pleasure. You were actually there when I was encouraged to do this podcast because we know each other through the Bankston community. And it was suggested that I do this podcast based on my spiritual direction. And I thought, well, I'll give it a whirl and see. So here we are almost a year later, and I'm so excited that you're here today. And so is there anything else you wanted to add to that description or something about yourself that you'd like the audience to know?
No, that's a pretty good summary of what I do. It said Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine and Acupuncture. And for a long time, or at least growing up, I was interested in traditional Western medicine or allopathic medicine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so interesting because as I've progressed through wanting to be a traditional medical doctor, then going to naturopathic medical school and acupuncture school instead, and now through clinical practice and experience, I'm moving further and further away from the traditional and more into the outlying therapies, energetic medicine, and things that are a little bit off the radar, but I find in practice and working with patients, they're very, very effective. So it's interesting how those transitions happen.
Yeah, I don't know your personal story, but I was rerouted a few times myself in my career. And sometimes when that would happen, it would feel like a failure or something that I had my heart set on that wasn't happening. But then looking back, I realized that I was actually getting an upgrade, a better option. So that's happened for me several times. Well, what are some of the things that you do with in that alternative world or off the beaten path that as you've described?
Yeah. So energy is a really broad term, right? But essentially, we use terms related to energy a lot just in regular conversation. For example, if you get along with someone, might say you vibe with them. I'm vibing with this person, or we're at a similar vibrational frequency.
Mm.
And I really think that most, especially living organisms, but even some innate objects like crystals, stones, the earth, they all have their own vibrational frequency because they're made up of atoms.
Mm.
And we aren't necessarily, or many of us are not necessarily trained to be intuitive or sense those vibrations, but that's energy, essentially electrons flowing and vibrating and jumping from one molecule to another. So it's all around us. Learning to be perceptive of it can take time. Some people have a natural gift for it,
Mhm.
but your question was, what are some of the things I do that are more in that realm?
Yeah.
Well, I think acupuncture, yes, we're using these needles, these steel or metal needles, but they aren't injecting something into the body that's going off and repairing a part of the body. They're actually influencing the energy that flows through the channels of the body. So I think that tends to fall sometimes in the energetic, under the energetic category. Also, cranial sacral therapy, cranial for the skull, sacral for the sacrum. And the cranial sacral part of the body, this is the skull, the spine, the sacrum, and houses the spinal cord, which is bathed with cerebral spinal fluid.
Mhm.
And you can't take your hands and put them into someone's body and manipulate that, but through sensing the vibration, how that's flowing, and putting your hands very gently on someone's body, you can influence that flow and the vibration of a body. Bangsted method, Reiki, and Qigong are all ways to intend to manipulate what they call the Qi from Qigong, and different practices. For example, Ayurveda, they refer to it as the prana, or in just standard American English, the life force. I believe chiropractors refer to it as the innate, and naturopathic doctors refer to it as the vis. So it's this unseen energy that flows through the body that makes us well and makes the body function. So finding ways to not only sense that, but encourage it to flow more effectively and more efficiently.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you.
You're
For
welcome.
those who are not familiar, do you want to just give brief descriptions for maybe Reiki and Bankston work?
Yeah, sure. So Reiki comes from Japan, and it's you don't actually have to touch the body, but it can include a gentle touch, and it's the practitioners acting as a medium that allows energy to flow through them and through the patient or the client's body to remove blockages. And Bangston, we can talk in great depth about, but essentially, Bangston is named after a man, PhD in sociology, if I'm not mistaken,
Mhm.
and he developed a technique that he's referred to as energy cure. And it's a way of essentially you come up with a list of items. And there's some discernment in coming up with this list. You have to come up with a minimum of 20 items. And the reason there's discernment is because they have to be things you really want. They can't be things that society suggests that you want, or your parents, or you think you want because you think they might make you happy. You really have to sit with this and think of, what are some things that would truly make me happy? So oftentimes people say money, but why? What would you do with that money? Oh, I'd take that money and I'd buy a off-roading vehicle. Why? Because with that off-roading vehicle, I could drive out to my favorite trail, and I could be out on that trail, and I could bring my camping gear with me or whatever. So you distill down to the thing that really makes you happy, and you come with a list of these, and then you essentially spin them in some pattern around yourself, in front of yourself, but it's called cycling. So you move through these images really, really fast. And as I've worked with this, I think the idea is, and I could be wrong, Bill Bankston might want to correct me on this or be upset with how I've interpreted it. But all of a sudden, you have this list of things that would really make you happy. And it's not just material things, it's accomplishments, it's experiences. I'd love to be sitting in Paris eating an eclair looking at the Eiffel Tower. So you visualize that like it's already happening, like you're already there.
Yeah.
And it creates this sense around you that all the things you ever wanted are right there. And it almost creates this feeling of equanimity and peace in knowing that um, there's support and this wholeness and completeness around you. And as you cycle, it's a way to channel energy. Is there anything you'd like to add to that? I'm
Yeah,
sure
that
I'm missing out. I'm
no,
missing a lot.
no, it's all good. It's so complicated. So
Right.
when I have also similarly struggled with how to talk about this. So you've done a beautiful job describing the technique of rapid visual cycling. which is not possible for people as much who don't visualize things easily. But like you said, it's more about the feeling sense that you get when you're in it. And what it does is it shifts your vibrational frequency, speaking of energy, at least theoretically. This is what I feel when I'm doing it. Puts me into a different state of consciousness. There's been some limited research that shows that all of the different brain frequencies are activated at once, all at the same time, which it's like this harmony that happens in the brain. And because of that, and when you're sort of stepping out of the way of your own mind, I think similar to Reiki, that it allows healing energy to come through us, which then can be directed towards us or towards someone else or towards an object or a plant or an animal, someone that is in need of healing. So I think that what you've described is the means of how to get into that state. And it's really the state of being that allows this healing to come through. And there's been research studies, as you well know, on animals. And so you might want to talk a little bit about that maybe, and what the effects of the Bastyr method have been. Are you familiar with that research?
Yeah, I am familiar with the research, and I thank you for connecting the dots for me. So I was talking about what the practitioner, kind of the process the practitioner is using, and you've taken it to the next level. All of a sudden, it alters a state of consciousness. And I think if you relate to some of Joe Dispenza's work, brainwaves, when we're active in the world, going about our day, we're often we're utilizing beta brainwaves,
Mm-hmm.
But then when you get really suggestible, for example, in the evening when you start to wind down and some people are watching television and all these commercials are coming on, the marketers know this, that you're in a very suggestible, you're unwinding, you're relaxing, all of a sudden you drop down into a different brainwave state. Of course, there's alpha brainwaves, there's theta, there's gamma, there's delta, which is the deep sleep. So I think we drop down into a different phase, right? This different vibration, and that does allow the energy to flow through us, and we can hopefully with practice direct it. So we can direct it to an individual, to ourselves, to a plant or an animal. So the research that Bastyr did, he started out with mice, lab mice, and they found one of the most commonly used cancers that's studied in labs, and it's a very aggressive cancer. And they injected the mice or infected the mice with this cancer. And I believe up to this point before this study, the longest a mouse lived with this particular cancer was 27, 28 days. And Bill Bastyr was doing his technique, the Bastyr method, on the mice. And it didn't look good. They were getting tumors. The tumors were growing and swelling. And the lead investigator said, just keep going with it. And Bill Bastyr was saying, I don't know, these mice don't look good. Maybe we shouldn't do this. Just keep going. Even if they live a day longer than 28 days, it's a result. Let's see what happens. And sure enough, they kept doing the work, and many of the tumors actually ulcerated. They expressed themselves, oozed out, and resolved after that. And the mice went on to live their full lifespan of 2 years or more, which is so, so fascinating. So the thought, as you start to dig down, well, what was it? What was really going on? You're actually giving energy to the body of the mouse, to its organism, to its being, so that it can start to signal cells properly and overcome the cancer and eradicate or rid the body of the cancer. So you're actually giving your energy, or maybe not your energy, but you're utilizing this energy, you're channelizing this energy to someone who's in a state of disease or struggling with something, and you're allowing that energy to essentially charge them up so they can overcome whatever malady or challenge or health concern they're struggling with. And this is fascinating. So taking this out of the Bastyr method and back into some of the types of medicine that I practice, acupuncture and naturopathic medicine, lifestyle or vitalistic medicine, there's, of course, the modern germ theory. You get a virus or a bacteria or a parasite, right? You get some pathogen or even a toxin. And the idea is I treat that toxin. If I kill the virus, I eradicate the bacteria, I treat the parasite, I remove the toxin from the body, the individual will be better. So that's very Western and very modern medicine. There is some of that in Eastern medicine and traditional forms of medicine. But a lot of times when you look at traditional Chinese medicine and ancient forms of medicine, it's more about not so much the infection or the pathogen, it's the state of the organism. So if there is a deficiency in blood or this energy we're talking about, chi, prana, vis, life force, then no matter what whatever you're subjected to, you can't overcome it. So they're often looking at acupuncture. Acupuncture is a prime example. We're using needles and herbs to build up the blood, to stimulate the chi, to get it flowing appropriately. And if you do so, the body will behave appropriately to handle whatever burden is on it itself, the infection, the overgrowth of cells like neoplastic cells, the parasite, like I said. So I think through the Bankston method and some of these energy techniques that we practice, we're allowing the organism that we're intending to be well to vibrate at a more appropriate, more functional, more healthful frequency. And with that increased vibrational frequency or that less diseased, more at ease frequency, the body can start to be well again.
Beautiful. And it has its own intelligence. It's almost like if you're starving and, someone is like, I want you to go train to be a marathon runner, but you're starving. Like, you need to eat. You don't need the technique or someone to sit and tell you, like, you really need to breathe differently and make sure your balance of weight shifts. That's not important. What's important then is to get fuel in the system. And then you can go out and utilize all that other knowledge. So it's looking at it from a different foundational perspective.
Yeah, you know what's so interesting? I think this is relevant and maybe a little off topic, but I think it ties in. So many times we think of a woman who becomes pregnant, and prior to pregnancy, she craves, let's say, sweets, chocolate. Chocolate is her
Mhm.
thing. Then, so she's an organism without a baby in her that has her own unique vibrational frequency. She craves chocolate and she gets chilly really easily, right? And she loves to be in the sun. Not everyone has that constitution. There's so many different constitutions, but hers is this. And then all of a sudden, she becomes pregnant and she has a baby growing in her womb with its own unique vibrational frequency. And all of a sudden, the mom who's now pregnant, who loved chocolate and was chilly all the time and liked to be in the sun, is craving barbecue and is warm all the time. Maybe because she's pregnant, but it shifts. So, what is all that about? I think that's this vibration. There's an interference, maybe not a negative interference, but there's two vibrational frequencies that are maybe shifting her baseline constitution. The other place you see this is, I think, in transplants. You'll hear these random stories of, before my transplant, I never even knew what opera was. And all of a sudden they get a heart transplant or some type of organ transplant. And they're like, I think I know this song, or they're humming to it, or they really love it and they're listening to it where they never had exposure to that previously. What's going on there? I think the organ that was transplanted has some type of memory or knowing of its original vibrational frequency, and you put that in someone else, and there's that interference that shift things. So if that works that way, why can't we as healthcare practitioners or allies in people's health, why can't we utilize some of these more subtle energies in the healing process?
I love it. Those are two great examples I can really relate to. With my firstborn, I remember the 4th month of pregnancy, I didn't know I wanted lemons. I went to the store, wasn't even aware I was buying lemons in various forms until I unpacked the bag. And it's like, I always got, these different products, but I had found all the lemon flavored ones. Even like sorbet, I didn't usually get lemon sorbet, that kind of a thing. And then the other, I remember a friend was having an organ placed into her body. And she talked to me like the night or two before the surgery. And I was talking with her about this very thing about resonant energy and how someone was donating, a living person was donating an organ. And to just be grateful for that and to recognize to her body that she was about to be accepting what would be considered a foreign object into her body, but it was going to be functional and in fact increase her vitality. And to instruct her body mentally about this and say, this is okay. Yes, it's going to be a surgery, but the idea here is for vitality. Please accept this as a gift and work harmoniously. And she just started crying on the phone thinking about that. And she says, I never would have thought that, to give gratitude to the donor, but not to accept the organ. And she said it made such a difference in her life. And her doctors were amazed at how quickly she recovered and how well she did. So, it's very powerful when we set our minds to understanding these vibrational frequencies.
Yeah, one other thing I'd like to add, because this question comes up quite a bit with my patient population that's new to acupuncture or wondering what I'm doing and how it works.
Mhm.
And we're exposed to what we're exposed to, and many people aren't exposed to these more subtle topics that we're talking about today. But one thing they can relate to is the EKG. A lot of people have had an electrocardiogram. So you put these leads on the chest and the limbs, and it literally measures the electrical conductivity through the heart. You see it go to the SA node, to the AV node, through like the bundles, and that's what makes the heart contract. It's an electrical impulse that we can measure, and you see it on the graph. You see the EKG waveforms. Well, the heart is a huge organ, right? The energetic heart. And we can see that, but not all energy has to be that strong to move through the body. So in traditional Chinese medicine, there's 12 main primary meridians that energy flows through. And when our nerves fire, it's an energetic flow. So when they say, what's this chi thing or this energy you're talking about? And why isn't it moving properly? Well, if we look at the heart and heart pathologies, you could have bundle branch blocks and AFib and all these different electrical conductivity problems through the heart, right? There can be delays from the SA node to the AV node, and it could be a physical trauma. It could be an emotional trauma. In fact, there's something called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, which is heartbreak syndrome. Takotsubo is funny. It's a Japanese container to catch octopus. It's like
Oh,
an octopus trap. And when they would look at the heart, they would see the heart, the left ventricle had the shape of this Takotsubo, but they were seeing a major correlation between true emotional heartbreak and how the heart was functioning. So it could be emotional, it could be physical trauma, or there could be toxins or medications that affect the electrical flow. Well, we're moving through life all the time. We're exposed to insults and people cutting us off, or we weren't able to achieve the things that we wanted in a given project that we were working on, or we're exposed to EMFs, or eating maybe not the most nutritious diet, or not sleeping appropriately. And this can all affect the electrical conductivity, not only through the heart, but through your channels. So I think when we do this work, we're trying to influence just a more balanced, even flow through the body, so all the organs have what they need to function the way they intended to.
beautiful. Great description. You bring it right back down. It's like I'm expanding it out today and you're like bringing it in, which is good. There's like this flow happening.
Well, I
And
think a lot of people wonder, does that really work? What is this woo-woo that you're doing? And when we
totally
could make real life examples, they start to say, oh, I can see how that might have an influence.
right. Yes. And the same with I do a version of EFT tapping, which is acupressure, and using holding, massaging, or tapping on the endpoints of different meridians, eyebrow, and so on here. And like, well, what's happening? And they think that it's actually sending signals through the connective tissue of the body, the collagen. Yeah. So electrical stimulation, intention with thought form, emotional awareness, consciousness, collagen. We're biopsychosocial beings in an energetic field. And so everything affects everything. And just like homeopathy, which is another thing we haven't really talked about, but we mentioned with your bio, that actually I had the hardest time getting my mind around homeopathy. I mean, I could even see that it was working, but I wanted to understand, how does this happen? That you're titrating, you're taking a substance and you're breaking it down. So there's like pretty much, quote, nothing left, just the information that's basically in a medium like water. And yet, the more you dilute it, the stronger it becomes. What? Like,
I know, I
oh
know.
my goodness. And then the notion that you could take a homeopathic remedy and it can unravel like a dozen more in your body mind system over the course of time from one tablet. And a sugar substance under your tongue or a drop. And I even found I was so sensitive to the suggestion that all I needed was to speak of it and maybe write it down, the name of the homeopathic remedy, and possibly hold it in my hand. And I would go into a full detox.
That's amazing. I love I love that. You know what? I saw this is again, maybe a little bit off topic. I saw someone at the gym recently and they had a glass bottle, like a big glass bottle, and they were exercising. And then on the glass bottle, they had stickers facing in the water where they wrote, love, I love you, you are loved, you are healthy, you are so fit. And I said, what are you writing on your bottle? And they said, oh, the water knows. The water is like getting the message. And when I drink it, I'm drinking love in my water. I said,
Yeah.
and that was just how it was, this was not at a alternative healthcare clinic. This was at a standard gym. And I saw this and I said, it's catching on. It's catching on. This is great.
In California.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So those of you that aren't in California, if you decide to visit, beware.
But yeah, people talk about that. I think Wayne Dyer talked a lot about that, writing stuff on the bottle and informing, praying over bodies of water and our own praying over our food or sending a positive intention or a vibe. So we have a magnetic match with our best health and vitality. But I wanted to ask you a question. How are you aware of how you use maybe your guidance, intuition, or whatever, selecting from all these tools? How do you know what to do with someone who's in front of you?
Oh my gosh, that is a huge question. It's a great question. So thank you for asking. Um, yeah. So in traditional medicine, we always take a history, right? So you get an idea. The patient tells you what they're feeling subjectively. My chief concern is this. I've been having these horrible migraines. And then how do you feel those? So you get a lot of information. And then you do physical exam, is it tender when I touch here? Is there a restriction, range of motion somewhere? So now you're starting to bring together information from what the patient's telling you and what you're observing. I always add in um, traditional Chinese medicine or even Japanese. I've been doing some work with traditional Japanese acupuncture.
Mhm.
So we take the pulses, and it's interesting. You take the radial pulse on the arm, but you take it in 3 positions at 3 different levels.
Mhm.
And each position's a different organ and different levels mean different things. So you get a quality of the pulse in different organs. You look at the tongue, right? The tongue can tell a lot. Some tongues are red, some have a red tip, and there's different parts of the tongue that are correlated to different organs in the body. Does a tongue have a thick white coat on it? Does a tongue have a large crack down the center? That all guides treatment as well, because essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to find a pattern. 10 people might have a headache and they might all experience it a little different. Oh, my headache's better when I actually put hard pressure on my forehead. Oh, I can't even touch my forehead. So everyone's experiencing a little different. So you want to find the pattern that that person is experiencing. So history. And in Western medicine, they say about 80% of the diagnosis is based on history alone with no physical exam, no labs. If it is something that I suspect is more physical, someone went on a trip somewhere and picked up traveler's diarrhea, I may include some labs. Did they pick up a parasite? So labs are part of it. With going back to the traditional Chinese or Japanese medicine, there's a little bit of abdominal palpation because there's correlations there. There's tenderness in the epigastrium, actually tenderness up near the clavicles, and you can help. That can help yeah, shed light on which pattern the patient's in. And then I really, not only sitting with the patient and just holding space for them and being open without a computer in my lap, just really being open.
Thank
Um,
you.
um, yeah, I'll scan. So with cranial sacral or visceral manipulation, or even Bangston method, which we breached on, if you're present in person with a patient, you can do a gentle reading, meaning you lay your hands gently on the crown of the head or on the shoulders. You could scan over the body. and you can just see if you feel any subtle changes. An area that's hotter, is an area that you float over and it feels like it wants to grab your hand or it's prickly. And when you combine that with all the other stuff, it pulls it together. And then there's one more thing. I'm sure you've probably heard of muscle testing before or
Hmm.
applied kinesiology. If I'm stuck or there's a difficult question, I might use that. I might ask the patient's body,
Okay.
is it a yes or a no? Is it the liver? And try to gain some information from that. So combining all of that helps me really get to focus in on what I think is the most important need in the body at that time.
Beautiful. Great description. So many layers of detective work. And for those who don't know, muscle testing, would you like me to summarize
Yeah,
that?
go ahead.
Applied kinesiology. So basically, the body has strength and weakness, not muscular, but energetic. For example, if you're given bad news, they say, please sit down first because they know that you can weaken with bad news. It's almost like a psychological escape or protection, and the body kind of goes limp with stress or shock. But then also you can be very strong with good news or happiness or joy. You know, you have this vitality. It's like an energy surge. And so there are subtle differences between this energy surge or strength and this weakening. And there's ways of using the body to detect whether something is strengthening you or weakening you. And for example, holding sugar in your hand and then testing the flow of energy, whether that's something that's encouraging health in you or not. And so you're asking actually a mental question. You're asking the person's body to show you energetically, are you strong or weak when we introduce the idea of, let's say, your liver. Is your liver healthy or not? And so there's ways of testing this in different forms of the body. Also, how you form the question and whether or not you and the person you're testing are grounded, centered, clear, not dehydrated. So there's a lot more to it than just asking questions and getting yes or no. There's a subtlety and complexity to it. So does
I
that?
couldn't, yeah, that, I mean, excellent explanation. Thank you. I couldn't explain it as well myself. There is a very interesting exercise. So I'm sure maybe some people are listening to this and not watching the video. I'll show it on the video as well for those who are watching, but for people who are listening, you take your two hands like you're making the OK sign. So you bring your index finger to the tip of your thumb, but you link them. So one index finger and thumb is on the inside of the other, and your other three fingers are just extended outward away from the links. And you try to pull apart, but you want to hold tight so you can't pull them, you can't make them pull through each other. And it's best if you do this with someone else, because if you have another person, they could pull your arms apart for you. But the first exercise is you think of something you love, just like an elevated emotion, gratitude, joy, something that makes you really happy, something you think is so beautiful in the world. For some people, it's their mother or their childhood or an experience they had or a success they had. You think of that and they hold that in their heart, and then the other person will try to pull their hands apart. And usually it's so strong because it's that elevated emotion, you can't pull the fingers through each other and make them snap. And then you stop, you clear them, you have them shake their hands out, and they do the same thing again. They bring their index fingers to their thumbs, but they link them. So your two OK signs. And you have them think of something ugly, disgusting, something in the world that makes them feel just sick to their stomach, a massacre, a war, something. And they just hold this like real negative thought, and you try to pull apart, and it comes right apart so fast. And it's really interesting because the person's muscular strength hasn't changed. You know, their muscles aren't atrophying. They're the same. It's in the same instant. They're just as strong. But that loop, the energetic connection and the thought that you're holding, the emotion you're holding, affects it so significantly. It's really a fun trick. And that I see that done sometimes in beginner muscle testing classes where, does this really work? Is this really a thing? Yeah, try this. And all of a sudden students are mind blown. Whoa.
Yeah, some people are actually reversed on that. And so if you are the person who just tried that, what the muscle test with the fingers, and you had opposite results, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong or bad. What I do is I always calibrate myself and I ask my body, show me what a yes is. For
Mm.
me, a yes, yeah. And then show me what a no is. And so for some people, it's the opposite. And so just kind of, it's good to kind of calibrate, show me, or you say, my name is Lori, my name is Susie. And so usually you'll get a yes on what your name is and a no on what your name isn't. So anyway, well, this has been so fascinating, and we're coming to the end of our time together. And is there anything else that you'd like to share that's come to mind or that you'd like to leave people with?
Oh, so many things. One thing I was going to mention briefly, I've never met this person before. Her name is Veda Austin, Veda. And there's podcasts with her. The only reason I'm bringing it up is because we were talking about water before, and she's continuing a lot of the work, like some of the Japanese studies. Is it Dr. Uh,
Emoto?
yeah, exactly. Continuing his work. And what she'll do is she'll set an intention to the water or play music to the water or show a photograph to the water. And she puts it in a thin dish and flash freezes it and right away takes a photo. And there's this one that's so interesting. I believe, I should be careful about quoting this because I'm probably wrong, but I think uh, she plays Stairway to Heaven to it, or there's some relation to Stairway to Heaven. And when she takes a picture of the crystals, it's literally a stairway. So if anyone's interested in water and energy, like the water having the ability to hold information, I think that is pretty interesting. And what else? Any other questions you have for me?
I am just thankful that you don't take notes. It's hard to get away from taking notes when you're interviewing someone. But when you just said that you do a scan of your person that you're across from and you're kind of reading their energy and being open, I just want to thank you for that on behalf of the people that you interact with, because I'm sure that they're feeling your presence and seeing your care and your willingness to enter into their life in that moment. And then all the other things that you're bringing to your practice. I'm certain that people are going to want to find you for a good reason, because it's
I
hard to
think,
find people who are working the way you are today.
yeah, thank you. Um, I think one of the challenges with modern medicine is that not everyone's the same, but we try to treat people the same. So it doesn't often work. It's everything from culture to body habitus to male versus female. And there's so many influences. So really treating the individual is, in my opinion, one of the most important things. You have to treat who's in front of you.
Mhm.
And we talked about so many different topics and modalities today, from energy medicine to acupuncture, homeopathy, even pharmaceuticals. There's a place for pharmaceuticals in surgery for sure, and I've used those definitely. But we have to find what's right for the individual, and we're in such a fast-paced world where people are used to getting information so fast. You could look up anything and have that information instantaneously, and we want health as quick as we can get it. And it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes we have to be patient. But I think if the individual who's achieving or trying to achieve wholeness, more wellness, a higher level of health, increase their health span. So Dr. Peter Attia, I learned this from him, not personally, but through listening to his podcast and reading his books. There's lifespan, right? And then there's health span. Lifespan is how many years you live. Health
Mm.
span is how many years you're healthy. So right now we're increasing lifespan. Life's the average life expectancy is longer than it had been previously. But the problem is those last few years or decade of life, the health span is not really there, right? So if someone says they want to increase their health span, there's a lot of ways to do it. But I think the key is finding the practitioners that you resonate with and finding the tools that are unique to that individual that's going to support them, and not being afraid to use a combination and just keep on peeling back the layers. Let's try this, let's try that, and see what works for you to really support the individual. Like you said, the body, the mind, the spirit, and the physical, all of that. So
Yeah.
that would be, in closing, just be open to all those different areas because it's all intertwined and they definitely influence each other.
Oh, beautiful, wise words. And I think you just came up with the title for this podcast, Healthspan. Love that.
Great.
Oh, thank you so very much for sharing your wisdom and your heart with all of us.
Thank you for having me as a guest. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my
It's
pleasure.
been fun.
Good. That's great. Okay. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. If you want to learn more, you can visit my website for podcast and resources at hopshealingtips.com. You can also like, share, and subscribe to this channel. This podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only and is not providing healthcare advice. Please seek guidance from your professional healthcare team should you need assistance.